Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift gently into the misty canals of ancient Tenochtitlan, where the Aztecs grew entire farms on floating islands. You'll wake up, or not, on a raft made of mud and reeds, surrounded by corn stalks, dragonflies, and the occasional judgmental duck. But don't get too comfortable. The lake has opinions, and your neighbor's canoe is drifting suspiciously close. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You awaken to the gentle lapping of water against wood, the scent of damp earth mingling with the faint aroma of maize. The morning fog clings to the surface of the lake, shrouding the world in a soft, silvery veil. As you sit up, the raft beneath you creaks, a patchwork of reeds and mud, your humble Chinampa, floating serenely on the waters of Lake Xochimilco around you. The world stirs to life. Dragonflies dart through the mist, their wings catching the early light. A heron stands motionless on a nearby bank, its gaze fixed on the water below. The distant sound of a conch shell signals the start of the day's activities in the city beyond. You stretch, feeling the cool morning air against your skin, and begin your routine. With a wooden paddle, you gently guide your canoe through the narrow canals, the water reflecting the sky's pale hues. Reaching the edge of your Chinampa, you inspect the crops, maize stalks standing tall, beans winding their way up supports, and squash vines sprawling across the soil. The Chinampa system, ingenious in its simplicity, allows for year-round cultivation. By layering mud, decaying vegetation, and other organic matter atop woven reed foundations, these floating gardens provide fertile ground for crops. The surrounding canals not only facilitate irrigation but also serve as highways for canoes transporting goods and people. As you tend to your plants, you recall the teachings passed down through generations. The importance of balance between land and water, cultivation and rest. The belief that the lake is a living entity, its moods reflected in the success of your harvests. You remember tales of ancestors who angered the lake by overharvesting, their Chinampas sinking beneath the waters as a warning. Today, you proceed with care. You remove weeds, check for pests, and ensure the canals remain clear. A passing neighbor greets you with a wave, their canoe laden with freshly harvested produce. You exchange pleasantries, discussing the weather and the prospects of the coming season. As the sun climbs higher, the fog dissipates, revealing the vibrant tapestry of Chinampas stretching across the lake. The city of Tenochtitlan rises in the distance, its temples and palaces shimmering in the sunlight. You pause, taking in the beauty of the scene, a harmonious blend of human ingenuity and natural splendor. Returning to your work, you feel a sense of contentment. Here, on your floating garden, you are part of a tradition that sustains not only your family but the entire city. Each plant you nurture, each canal you maintain, contributes to the intricate web of life that defines this place. As the day progresses, the sounds of the city grow louder, vendors calling out their wares, children laughing, drums beating in the distance. But on your Chinampa, time seems to flow differently, marked by the rhythm of nature and the steady cadence of your labor. In the evening, as the sky turns shades of orange and pink, you sit on the edge of your raft, feet dangling above the water. The lake reflects the colors of the sunset, creating a mirror image that blurs the line between sky and earth. You breathe deeply, inhaling the sense of damp soil and blooming flowers, and feel a profound connection to this land and its history. Night falls, and the stars emerge, their reflections dancing on the water's surface. You lie back on your chinampa, the gentle rocking of the raft lulling you into a state of tranquility. As you drift off to sleep, the sounds of the lake, crickets chirping, water lapping, distant drums, create a soothing lullaby. In this moment, you are one with the lake, the chinampa, and the generations who came before you. Their knowledge and traditions live on through your hands, ensuring that the floating gardens continue to thrive, nourishing both body and spirit. You remember the first time you tried to build a floating garden. Your raft sank, the tomatoes floated away, and your grandfather laughed until he cried. It begins, as many things do, with overconfidence and a bundle of damp reeds. You must have been 15. Barely strong enough to lift the mud bucket without sloshing half of it onto your feet, and yet something in you, a mix of pride and impatience, had decided that this was the week you'd build your own chinampa. A real one, just like the grown-ups, just like grandfathers, except somehow better. Maybe with 3 rows of maize instead of 2. Maybe with a duck pond. You hadn't gotten that far in your planning. You announced your intentions at breakfast, between mouthfuls of stewed amaranth and roasted squash. Grandfather looked up slowly from his bowl. By yourself? You nodded, straightening your back. Yes, I want to learn. He chewed thoughtfully, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and stood. Then learn you shall. He walked to the back of the hut, rummaged around, and returned with a bundle of old reed mats tied together with sisal. He dropped them in front of you with a grin. Your ship awaits, Captain. That should have been the first warning. The thing about floating gardens is, they don't actually float. Not naturally, anyway. They're anchored into the shallow lake bed with long, pliable trees called ahujotes, their roots gripping the mud like fingers. The gardens themselves are more like artificial islands, layered over time with mud, compost, water plants, and anything that might rot in a useful way. But 15-year-old, you didn't really know that. You'd only half listen when grandfather explained it during market trips. You were usually distracted by dragonflies or the smell of roasted cacao. You did what made sense to you. You took the reeds, laid them out like a big rectangle on the water, and started dumping mud on top. Not in layers. Not carefully. Just mud. Buckets of it. The first few shovelfuls went fine. The raft sagged a little, but you were confident. After all, this was mud, magic Aztec mud from the sacred Lake Xochimilco. It would hold. Then came the weight. The mud pressed down, and the reeds started to sink. You didn't notice at first, too busy trying to balance a baby tomato plant in the center like some sort of triumphant flag. But the raft tilted, slowly, then faster, and before you knew it, your feet were wet. Then your ankles. Then, whoosh, your entire chinampa rolled sideways and disappeared beneath the water like a lazy toad. Your tomato plant floated past your knee. You stared at it, blinking. Somewhere behind you, from the banks of the canal, came the unmistakable sound of someone trying not to laugh. You turned. Grandfather was there, leaning on his paddle, one eyebrow raised. A dragonfly buzzed past between you, probably embarrassed for both of you. You expected a scolding, or a lecture. Instead, grandfather laughed. Deep, belly shaking, tear-streaming laughter that echoed off the reeds. You stood there, dripping, half mortified and half amused, as he wiped his eyes. That, he said, finally, was the worst floating garden I've ever seen. Let's build a real one. The lesson started the next day. First rule, grandfather said, driving a wooden stake into the lake bed. You don't build it on the water. You build it into the water. You worked side by side, planting a frame of trees, ahujotes, into the soft mud. Their long, whippy roots would help hold the whole thing together. Then you wove thick mats of reeds between the posts, forming a rough wall like a basket laid on its side. The basket would be filled with mud, silt, decomposing water plants, kitchen scraps, fish bones, even the shells of axolotls. Everything rots into something useful, grandfather said, and slowly, over days, your island began to grow. The first layer was dark and heavy. Mud from the lake bottom, cold and oozing between your fingers. You spread it with wooden paddles, shaping the ground like a baker shaping dough. The second layer was lighter, pulpy weeds and wilted maize leaves, compost from your mother's cooking pot, even duck droppings, gathered from a truly uncooperative duck. With each new layer, the Chinampa rose. The reeds held the shape. The trees held the edges. And for the first time, you felt something real forming under your hands, something you had made, not imagined. You chose the spot carefully, on the east edge of the Chinampa, where the sun hit first. You knelt, pressed the seedling into the earth, whispered something that might have been a prayer or might have been an apology for the first attempt, and covered its roots with a ring of crushed eggshells. Why eggshells? You asked. Snails hate them, grandfather said. You didn't ask why snails hated them. You just nodded, feeling wiser. Weeks passed. The Chinampa grew lusher. Squash vines crept across the surface like lazy green snakes. The maize rose steadily, leaves rustling like gossip. Even the tomato plants, now properly planted, began to flower. One evening, after a day of weeding and water hauling, you lay flat on your back in the middle of the island. Above you, the sky shifted from blue to orange, to purple, to navy, and finally to black. Stars began to peek out, reflected faintly in the canal's still surface. Grandfather joined you, sitting on an overturned basket, munching a tamal. You built it, he said. No sarcasm. Just those 3 words. You nodded. It floats. No, he said, with a rare smile. Now it stands. Historians still argue whether Chinampas were true floating gardens or simply anchored platforms of earth that rose with the lake's level. What's certain is, they worked. So well, in fact, that they fed one of the largest cities in the world at that time. The soil never dried. Crops rotated year-round. And from the air, or even from a high perch in Tenochtitlan's temples, the Chinampas looked like patchwork quilts stitched into the lake. Each square a living story of corn and beans and mistakes learned in the mud. You were now part of that story. And somewhere, at the bottom of the lake, probably still half buried in silt and home to a school of sleepy fish, lay your first raft, the one that flopped, floundered, and failed. The one that taught you everything. No one ever taught you how to balance on a canoe filled with baguano. But this morning, you're doing exactly that. Just 14, your feet barely steady on the edge of the little wooden boat. You're tasked with ferrying sacks of moss and bat droppings, an invaluable, pungent fertilizer, across the misty waters of Lake Texcoco. The lake is blanketed in early fog. A cool breeze tousles your hair, and each ripple beneath the boat sends your heart skipping that it's your first time venturing far from your family's floating gardens. Beyond your usual path, the water stretches endlessly, and far away, faint smoke rises from Chinampas you've only heard about. Your arms are starting to ache. What once seemed like simple strokes now feel like hauling mountains. The southern wind picks up, pushing back against every bit of progress. You grit your teeth, lean into the paddle, Your canoe is a simple one, narrow, carved from a single tree trunk, weathered from years of use. Its bow is chipped, and there's a crack running halfway up the left side that you keep patching with sap and hope. It doesn't glide as much as it scolds the water, bouncing in protest against each wave. Still, it floats. And that's all you need right now. The lake is a mirror to the sky above. You glance upward, seeing wisps of cloud unfurling like white maize husks against the dawn. Below, your reflection stares back, boyish, determined, flecked with nervous sweat. You imagine yourself as one of those cloud birds your grandfather used to point out, gliding effortlessly. But then a gust of wind slaps your thoughts away. Suddenly, there's a soft plop beside your boat. Startled, you glance down. A large fish, maybe an axolotl, surfaces, wide eyes shimmering like wet stones. It yawns lazily, exposing a pink tongue and pebble-like teeth. For a strange moment, the two of you seem to share a single thought. Is this really happening? You laugh. A short, tired laugh that echoes over the still waters. The fish disappears, but its goofy, glassy-eyed gaze gives you the push you need. You shift your weight, lowering your body, aligning with the wind. The canoe senses your change and steadies, and then the real struggle begins. The sacks shift with every movement. They are heavy, soaked with water and packed with the thick, musty essence of cave shadows and ancient droppings. Each time the canoe rocks, you fear tipping. Not just because of the splash and the swim, but because the fertilizer is precious. It is what makes your family's Chinampa lush. Without it, the maize doesn't rise as tall, the squash vines curl yellow, and the elders worry. You remember when your uncle first brought you to the cave. He'd shown you how to scoop the guano carefully, how to blend it with moss and lake silt, and how even the smallest of efforts, when mixed with patience, could feed an entire household. Everything grows from what came before, he said, tapping the guano with reverence. Now it's your turn. You're not just ferrying sacks. You're ferrying responsibility. Halfway across, your arms are noodles. Your palms sting from the bamboo paddle, and your lower back throbs. The fog hasn't lifted entirely, but the shapes of floating gardens begin to form on the horizon. You whisper a prayer, not the loud, ceremonial kind, but a quiet one, like a secret between the lake and your heart. You count your breaths. Each one matches a paddle stroke. 1, 2, 3, 4. You think of the meals this fertilizer will support, of Aya and her drawings of squash blossoms, of your mother and her green chili tamales, of your brother who teases you but always saves the softest tortilla. Time stretches like the wind. You don't know how long you've been paddling, but the sun rises higher, painting the fog with gold. Shadows scatter. Birds skim the surface nearby, their wings slicing the still water like prayers. Eventually, the outline of your Chinampa sharpens. You see the woven reed fences, the patched hut, the familiar slant of the drying rack. Your dog, Tepidal, barks from shore and runs in dizzying circles. You almost cry. Pulling alongside the dock, you nudge the canoe gently against the mooring post. The sacks are intact, if a bit soggy. You step out and promptly collapse to your knees. Your legs wobble, but the earth is solid. You press your hands to it, letting the cool mud seep between your fingers that you've made it. You unload the sacks one by one, stacking them beside the compost pit. Your mother appears, offering a cup of hot cacao. She doesn't say much, just nods, her eyes soft. You sip. It's warm, thick, with a hint of chili. You can taste pride in it. Later that evening, you mix the guano with silt and moss. Your arms protest, but your mind is calm. This, you realize, is what the elders meant when they spoke of growing roots, not just in soil, but in effort. That night, lying on a woven mat, your muscles aching, you stare up at the stars. You feel the rocking of the canoe still in your bones. You think of the fish, the wind, the weight. You think, I can do hard things. You fall asleep before you finish the thought. You thought growing corn would be simple until you met your neighbor. He's not just any neighbor. He's the unofficial maize champion of the Western Chinampas. Old, weathered, and suspiciously cheerful, he cultivates a perfectly aligned, gleaming row of golden corn that people from neighboring plots come to admire. Meanwhile, you've devoted yourself to your family's heirloom purple maize. Longer, spindlier, but vibrant as amethyst under the sunit first. The differences felt harmless, until the two of you began planting side by side. Your plot sits a mere 5 paces from his. It wasn't intentional. The lake current had shifted some floating logs one season, and before anyone could correct it, your Chinampas touched corners. Now, every day, as you tend your purple stalks, you feel his gaze. Your plants look like dancers in the wind, he said one morning, eyeing your purple corn swaying. Mine stand firm, like warriors. You chuckled then. Dancers bring joy, you replied, and warriors get tired. It was a light exchange, but soon, the jokes evolved at midday. As both your shadows grew long and sweat beaded your brow, he offered you a roasted ear of his corn, golden, gleaming, sprinkled with chili ash. You tasted it. Sweet, creamy, almost annoyingly good, not bad, you admitted. But you should try mine boiled. It bites back, in a good way. That evening, you brought him a cob of your purple maize. He didn't say anything after his first bite, just nodded. The rivalry began there. Not bitter, not hostile, but real. You started counting how many ears he picked. How tall your stalks grew. You worried if your husks looked too tight. He fretted about his kernels drying too fast. Ion noticed. You two are like married people, she teased. Except your love is corn. You laughed, but she was right. Each day became a contest. Who's first to water? Who's cleverer with pest control? Who gets more compliments? One day, children from the village passed by. One pointed to your rose. Why is that corn purple? He asked. You smiled. Because it's rich in story. The neighbor grunted. Golden corn has history too. It's what the gods made us from. The child's eyes widened. So which one is better? You and your neighbor looked at each other. Try both, you said, at the same time. The next week, during the full moon festival, you prepared a stall together. Half golden, half purple maize dishes. Tamales, atolls, roasted cobs, ground meal cakes. People came. They tasted. They argued, debated, laughed. That night, you two sat side by side, chewing in silence. Yours pairs better with lime, he admitted. Yours with chili, you replied. You both smiled. Something shifted. After that, the boundary between your plots became more porous. You shared more tips. You taught him how to twist husks for extra steam. He showed you how to space rows for wind buffering. But still, on sunny days, you'd catch him counting your cobs. And you? You never stopped counting his compliments. Your rivalry softened into something older, quieter. Like wind through dry leaves. Like a well-tended row of maize that grows not from competition, but cared by the end of harvest. You built a shared drying rack. Hung your purple ears beside his gold. Let the breeze mingle their scent. Some evenings, you'd find him napping under the awning, a half-eaten purple cob in hand. Other nights, you'd catch yourself nibbling a golden kernel, while sketching new planting patterns. N01 declared a winner. But when spring came, and it was time to choose seeds, you both chose both colors, and the field, in bloom, danced in shades of fire and dusk. You never spoke about it directly. But every bird that landed on those rows, every child that passed by and asked, "Why are they different?" You smiled. "Because they're better that way," you'd say, and the neighbor, somewhere near, would nod. You wake before the sun, the air still cool and heavy with the scent of damp earth and lake water. The sky is a deep indigo, stars fading as the first hints of dawn creep over the horizon. The Chinampa lies silent, its surface glistening with dew, the plants still asleep in the pre-dawn hush. This is your favorite time. Before the bustle of the day begins, before the canals fill with the sounds of paddles and voices, there's a moment of perfect stillness. You sit at the edge of the Chinampa, feet dangling over the water, watching as the world slowly wakes. The heron glides silently across the canal, its wings barely disturbing the surface. Frogs croak softly in the reeds, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows. You take a deep breath, filling your lungs with the crisp morning air, and feel a sense of peace settle over you as the sun rises, casting golden light over the landscape. You begin your work. There's weeding to be done, and you move methodically through the rows of maize and beans, pulling out the unwanted plants and tossing them into a basket. The soil is rich and dark, a testament to the layers of mud and compost that have been carefully built up over time. You pause to admire a particularly healthy tomato plant, its leaves vibrant and its branches heavy with fruit. You remember planting it as a seedling, watching it grow day by day, and feel a surge of pride. This is your work, your creation, and it's thriving. Grandfather joins you later in the morning, carrying a basket of tools and a jug of water. He nods in approval at the state of the Chinampa, his eyes crinkling with a smile. "You've done well," he says, handing you the jug. "The plants are healthy, the soil is strong. This is good work." You take a sip of the cool water, grateful for the praise. Together, you continue the day's tasks, tending to the plants, reinforcing the reed walls, and dredging nutrient-rich mud from the canals to spread over the Chinampa. It's hard work, but it's satisfying, and the hours pass quickly as the sun reaches its peak. You take a break, sitting in the shade of an ahujote tree. You share a simple meal with grandfather, fresh tortillas, beans, and slices of ripe tomato from the garden. The food tastes better knowing it's the result of your labor. In the afternoon, you paddle a canoe through the canals, delivering baskets of produce to the market in Tenochtitlan. The city is bustling, its streets filled with traders, artisans, and farmers like yourself. You navigate the waterways with ease, the familiar routes etched into your memory. At the market, you set up your stall, arranging the vegetables and herbs with care. Customers stop to admire the freshness of your produce, and you engage in friendly banter, negotiating prices and sharing stories. The day is long, but the sales are good, and you return home with a sense of accomplishment. As evening falls, you sit once more at the edge of the Chinampa, watching the sun set over the lake. The sky is ablaze with color, and the water reflects the hues like a mirror. You feel a deep connection to this land, to the cycles of growth and harvest, and to the legacy of those who came before you. Grandfather joins you, and together you sit in companionable silence, the day's work behind you and the promise of tomorrow ahead. The Chinampa is more than just a garden. It's a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and the enduring bond between people and the land. You awaken to the soft rustle of maize leaves swaying in the early morning breeze, the air thick with the earthy scent of damp soil and the distant calls of waterfowl echoing across the canals. The sun has yet to crest the horizon, but the Chinampa is already stirring with life. Today marks the beginning of the harvest season, a time of both celebration and labor. The maize stands tall and proud, its golden tassels shimmering with dew, while the squash vines sprawl lazily across the rich, dark soil, their broad leaves sheltering plump, ripening fruit. You stretch, feeling the familiar ache in your muscles. A testament to the hard work that has brought you to this moment. Grandfather is already at the edge of the Chinampa, his silhouette framed against the soft glow of dawn, carefully inspecting the crops with a practiced eye. Time to gather the fruits of our labor, he says, his voice carrying the weight of generations of knowledge and tradition. You join him, and together you begin the meticulous process of harvesting. Each ear of maize is examined, its kernels plump and firm, before being gently twisted from the stalk and placed into woven baskets. The squash are cradled carefully, their skins a vibrant tapestry of greens and oranges, while the beans are plucked from their vines, their pods crisp and full. As the sun rises higher, casting a warm, golden light over the Chinampa. The baskets fill with the bounty of your efforts. The air is alive with the hum of insects and the distant songs of birds, creating a symphony that accompanies your work. After hours of labor, you take a moment to rest, sitting beneath the shade of an ahujo tree. You share a simple meal with grandfather, fresh tortillas, beans, and slices of ripe tomato from the garden. The food tastes better knowing it's the result of your labor. In the afternoon, you paddle a canoe through the canals, delivering baskets of produce to the market in Tenochtitlan. The city is bustling, its streets filled with traders, artisans, and farmers like yourself. You navigate the waterways with ease, the familiar routes etched into your memory. At the market, you set up your stall, arranging the vegetables and herbs with care. Customers stop to admire the freshness of your produce, and you engage in friendly banter, negotiating prices and sharing stories. The day is long, but the sales are good, and you return home with a sense of accomplishment. As evening falls, you sit once more at the edge of the Chinampa, watching the sun set over the lake. The sky is ablaze with color, and the water reflects the hues like a mirror. You feel a deep connection to this land, to the cycles of growth and harvest, and to the legacy of those who came before you. Grandfather joins you, and together you sit in companionable silence, the day's work behind you, and the promise of tomorrow ahead. The Chinampa is more than just a garden. It's a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and the enduring bond between people and the land. You're not used to visitors. Out here among the floating gardens, it's mostly frogs and birds that interrupt your day. Maybe a trader passing by on the canal, or an egret bold enough to strut near the maize stalks. But today there's a canoe. You spot it from a distance, long, narrow, carved from cypress, gliding silently between the reeds. At first you think it's a merchant or maybe one of the priests from the lower temples coming to inspect the Chinampas for the city census. But the figure in the bow wears neither the trader's plain tunic nor the embroidered sash of a priest. He wears green, deep green, with a collar edged in jade. Your stomach drops. Green means the court. Jade means power. You wipe your hands on your tunic and straighten up, heart thumping like a festival drum. Grandfather notices too. He's tending to the squash vines nearby, but now he stands, squinting at the boat. His jaw tightens. The boat docks gently beside your Chinampa. The man in green does not step out. He simply looks. "You are the boy," he says, not a question. His voice is smooth, like cooled obsidian. The one who grows the maize with stalks the width of a child's arm. You glance at grandfather. He says nothing. Yes, You reply, though you suddenly feel like maybe you aren't. The man nods once, as though the universe has aligned with his expectations. I have a message from Tlatelolco, he says, naming the great northern sister city of Tenochtitlan. A request, really, from a woman named Io. She says she will trade 6 lengths of Quetzal feathered cloth for a cutting of your tomatoes. You blink. The tomatoes? You're proud of them, sure. They're sweet, plump, heavy for their size. But trade with Quetzal feathers? Those are tribute grade. Only nobility can even handle them without a license. She tasted them at market. He continues, and refuses to eat any other now. You glance at grandfather again. His mouth twitches just slightly. Maybe amusement, maybe warning. We will send a runner every 7th day, the man adds. Do not disappoint her. And with that, the canoe pushes away, silent as mist, leaving you ankle deep in squash leaves and very, very confused. Later that day, grandfather leans against a tree and looks at you as if seeing you for the first time. Well, he says slowly, I suppose now you're a royal farmer. You laugh. Sort of. Does this mean I can charge more at market? He chuckles. You can try. That night, you dream of tomatoes the size of your head being carried on silk cushions into marble palaces. You wake up grinning to eye in the days that follow. The runner arrives like clockwork. Every 7 days, at the same hour, a slim young man in a red sash appears at the edge of your Chinampa, bows, and presents a small basket. You place inside it exactly 10 tomatoes, no more, no fewer. He nods, leaves, and you go back to work. After the 3rd visit, he begins to talk. Her name is Io, he says one morning as you wrap the fruit. She's not a priestess, not quite. Not royalty either, but close. Her family tends to the royal garden terraces in the city. She says your tomatoes smell like the ones her grandmother grew before the Great Flood. You don't know what to say, so you just nod that he shrugs. She likes stories. Maybe tell her one. So the next week, you tuck a folded scrap of bark paper into the basket, with a short tale about how a duck once chased you into the canal for stealing her eggs. It's silly. You don't expect anything to come of it. But the next week, the runner brings back a reply. Quack. It reads in fine, careful script, with a tiny drawing of a duck holding a tomato. You laugh so hard you drop the basket. You start writing a new note every week. Sometimes it's a story from your childhood. Sometimes it's a riddle. Once you send her a pressed bean leaf shaped like a heart. She replies with a sketch of a maize plant hugging a tomato that you've never met her. You don't even know what she looks like. But in the quiet rhythm of planting and tending and waiting, this strange, leaf-wrapped correspondence becomes a part of your life. Grandfather notices. You're smiling too much, he mutters one day as he spreads mulch. Maybe I'm just proud of my beans. Then, one evening, the runner returns not with a basket, but with a message. She wishes to see the gardens, he says. Your breath catches. In person, you ask, foolishly. No, he deadpans. In spirit. Yes, in person. You stare at him, heart doing a slow somersault. When? Tomorrow. Of course, that night you can't sleep. You rake the Chinampa clean, fluff the rows, scrub mud off every tool you own. You even brush your tunic with a twig broom. Grandfather watches silently. When the dawn comes, you're ready. You stand on the edge of your garden, trying not to fidget. And then, there she is, standing in the bow of the canoe, hair braided in thick coils, tunic dyed with marigold and lime, a sash of blue and jade trailing like water behind her. She steps lightly onto the Chinampa, eyes wide, mouth slightly parted. It's more beautiful than I imagined, she says. You forget how to speak. She walks among the plants slowly, fingertips brushing the leaves, nose buried in a squash blossom. She kneels beside your best tomato plant and sniffs. Then she stands. You named it? The tomato. She laughs. No, the garden. You pause. Yes, you lie. She raises an eyebrow. What's its name? You swallow. Chimalpopoca. She laughs again, louder this time. Shield that smokes. That's a king's name. You shrug, trying not to smile. It grew big. Fast. She bends, plucks a tomato, and bites it. Juice runs down her chin. Tell me about the duck again. She says so you do, and the sun sets behind you. You're dreaming of squash blossoms. They flutter in your sleep like golden moths, petals soft, edges glowing, drifting through canals of memory. In the dream, they speak, not in words, exactly, but in rustles. Don't forget us. They seem to whisper. We remember you. You wake with your cheek pressed into woven matting, the sky already tinged with warm rose. The blossoms are still there, just outside your hut, still on the vine, still covered in dew. You smile, slow and sleep-heavy that it's a harvest morning. You and grandfather don't speak much before the sun is up. You stretch, yawn, wash your face in the canal water, and start your silent dance through the rows, basket in one hand, pruning knife in the other. The chinampa is thick with life. The squash vines have crept further overnight. You gently lift a blossom, peer underneath. Another fruit, chubby and green, curling into itself like a sleeping cat. The maize is in tassel now, golden threads waving from the tops, husks plump. You press one gently. The kernels inside resist your touch, firm and filled. You nod to yourself, satisfied. A good seasoned as you move through the rows. You pluck only what's ready. A tomato so ripe it might burst. A fistful of amaranth leaves, soft as silk. A bundle of green beans curled like dancers' fingers. Each item is placed in the basket like a jewel. No bruises. No rush. Grandfather joins you around the third row. He grunts softly in approval, picking up where you left off. His basket is older than yours, patched and darkened with age, but his hands are quick. You work in parallel, like two threads in the same cloth. Wind from the east today, he mutters after a while. You glance up. The ahujotes are swaying. That means dry days ahead. We'll mulch the beans thicker. You nod. You trust his nose more than the priest's almanac. Later, you haul the baskets into the canoe. Today's delivery is special, not just to the market, but to Ayal. You still haven't found the courage to call her a friend or something more. But the notes have grown longer. The drawings more playful. One of your favorites was a sketch of a chinampa shaped like a duck, with the caption, "She demands taxes and tomatoes." You'd laughed until you dropped a real tomato into the canal. Now, you wrap today's tribute with care. Tomatoes, yes, but also tiny green chiles, and a folded square of bark paper with a riddle. What begins with a seed needs no wings to fly, but crosses a city in a day. You wonder if she'll guess this note. As you paddle toward the city, the canals are busy, canoes full of squash, flowers, firewood. Children run along the banks, shouting and waving. One nearly topples into the water, chasing a dragonfly. You reach out just in time, grabbing the back of his tunic and pulling him upright that he looks up at you, startled. "Thank you, Senor Farmer," he calls, before dashing off again. You shake your head, smiling. The city is louder now than you remember. Tenochtitlan pulses with sound. Drums from the temple, Haggling in the square, the distant chant of market criers listing their wares in rhythms older than your Chinampa. You dock at the usual spot and start setting up. Tomatoes at the front, shiny, round, pride of place. Squash in a neat pyramid. Amaranth leaves tied in bundles with maize husks. You've done this so many times, you could do it blindfolded. A customer arrives almost immediately. A cook from the southern district, nose sharp as his knives. He pokes, prods, sniffs, mutters, then nods. Same as last week, he says. Better even. You hand him a half-dozen tomatoes. He gives you 3 dried chilies in return, his signature trait. You bite one on the spot. It's fiery. You grin. He grins back. Trade is fast today. Your stall is nearly empty by midday. And then the runner arrives that he doesn't say much. He never does. Just bows. Hands you a small cloth-wrapped parcel. You trade him the tomatoes, the chiles, the note. Today, though, today he lingers, she smiled. He says suddenly, quietly. When she read your last one. Your ears go red that he doesn't tease. He just nods once, polite as always, and leaves. Inside the cloth parcel is another drawing. This time a Chinampa shaped like a heart, floating across the lake with wings. Back at your own Chinampa, the afternoon sun is strong. You pull weeds slowly, absently, your thoughts wandering. Aya has never seen this place. Not really. Only through your letters, your sketches, your clumsy attempts at humor. And yet somehow, she understands it. That night, under a sky powdered with stars, you make a decision. The next morning, you ask grandfather for help. You want to build something new, not a second Chinampa. There's no room for that. But a little platform beside the garden. A floating terrace, really. Somewhere to sit, to write, maybe to host a guest. He raises an eyebrow but doesn't question it. We'll use cypress beams, he says, and woven mats. But you'll do most of the weaving. You nod, grinning. It takes a week. You haul the wood, tie the reeds, scrape your knuckles raw, and curse the sun. Grandfather only chuckles. You build slow, he says, but you build strong. When it's done, you anchor the platform beside the Chinampa with stones and willow rope. You cover it in mats, lay out a simple cushion, place a clay cup for water, and sit back. It's not much, but it's yours. You write her that evening. There's a seat for you, if you ever wish to see the squash bloom at dawn. No drawing, just those words. You send it, and wait. The reply comes 5 days later. 1 line. Will there be tea? You laugh out loud, and write back. Only the finest lake heat infusions, served by barefoot squash farmers. And beneath that, a sketch of you, apparently, in a crown of amaranth leaves. You don't know what will happen next, but you do know the Chinampa has never felt more alive. Not just with plants, or water, or birdsong, but with the slow-growing sense that something is changing. That you are no longer just the boy who sank his first raft, or the farmer who learned to layer compost in silence. You are now also someone who dares to build a seed, who offers it, and waits. You wake to the sound of rain. Not a storm, just a soft, steady drizzle tapping against the thatched roof, whispering across the lake. The air is cool and damp, carrying the earthy scent of wet soil and blooming flowers. You sit up slowly, stretching your limbs, and listen to the gentle rhythm of water meeting water. Outside, the Chinampa glistens under the morning light. Raindrops cling to the leaves of maize and squash, forming tiny prisms that catch the sun's rays. The canals are calm, their surfaces disturbed only by the occasional ripple of a passing fish or the dip of a bird's wing. You step out onto the damp earth, feeling the coolness seep through your soles. The plants seem to sigh with relief, their thirst quenched by the night's rain. You walk among them, checking for any signs of damage, but find none. The Chinampa has weathered the rain well. As you tend to the garden, your thoughts drift to Io. It's been a few days since her last note, and you find yourself anticipating the arrival of the runner. You wonder what new drawing or riddle she might send, and what stories she might share. Later, as you prepare your harvest for the market, the runner arrives. He hands you a small, folded piece of bark paper, and you feel your heart quicken. Inside is a sketch of a Chinampa under the rain, with a figure, clearly you, dancing among the plants. Below it, a single line, "Even the rain dances with you." You smile, tucking the note safely into your pouch. The connection between you and Io grows stronger with each exchange, a bond woven through words and images, laughter, and shared experiences. At the market, the rain has kept some vendors away, but the regulars are there. They greet you warmly, commenting on the freshness of your produce and the resilience of your crops. You trade stories and goods, the camaraderie of the market providing a sense of community and belonging. As the day ends, you return to your Chinampa, the rain having ceased, leaving the air crisp and clean. You sit by the canal, watching the sun set over the water, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. You think of Io, of the Chinampa, of the life you've built here. You feel content, grounded in the rhythm of the land and the connections you've forged. The Chinampa is more than a garden. It's a testament to resilience, to tradition, and to the quiet joys of a life well lived. Tonight, the lake is glowing. It isn't a metaphor. Not this time. You paddle out just before dusk and see it. Tiny flickers beneath the water's surface, soft and blue, blinking like sleepy fireflies. You dip your fingers in, and they shimmer. Algae, grandfather says from the stern. Happens when the water is warm and the moon is high. You lean closer, entranced. It looks like stars fell in. He chuckles. Careful. The gods might hear you and think you've grown too poetic. You splash him. He splashes back. This time, you've brought Io with you. Well, almost. She hasn't come in person. Not yet. But in her last note, she wrote, "Describe it. Every part. I want to be there." So tonight, as the lake shimmers and your canoe drifts between Chinampas glowing faintly in the dusk, you tell the story aloud, to no one and to her. You start with the trees. The ahujotes stand tall along the banks, their willowy trunks catching the breeze. Their leaves rustle like whispers, gentle, secretive, the sound of green things telling bedtime stories to the wind. The maize is tall now, tassels nodding as if they too are listening. Beans spiral up their stalks, clinging like sleepy children to their mother's legs. The squash vines. Oh, the squash vines curl over everything, their wide leaves spread like sun-soaked blankets. You describe the smell, rich, loamy earth still holding the memory of rain. Warm squash flesh just split open, the faint perfume of night-blooming flowers. Even the clay cup of tea in your hand smells like peace. Grandfather clears his throat. You know she can't hear you, right? You nod, but you speak anyway. You describe the water next, how the lake laps softly against the woven reed walls of the Chinampa, how the bioluminescent plankton respond to touch, flaring in tiny pulses beneath the surface. You drag your paddle gently and leave a glowing trail behind, like painting with light. You say, grandfather grunts. Romantic nonsense. But he's smiling. You describe how the stars reflect in the canal, how for one breathless moment, It's impossible to tell where the sky ends and the lake begins. Then, you describe the moon that it's rising now, slow and golden, its reflection shimmering beside your boat. A path, you say aloud. A silver path across the water. You imagine Ayal leaning against the side of the canoe, sketchbook in hand, trying to capture the moon's smile. You imagine her smiling back. Back at the Chinampa, you light a small fire on the floating platform, the one you built for her. Grandfather brews tea with cinnamon bark and wild mint. You pour 2 cups, though only one will be drunk that she'll want to know everything. So you tell her how the Chinampa feels under your feet, spongy, springy, alive. How the fire cracks softly, like old reeds breaking. How the tea smells like warmth, even before you sip it. You sip, close your eyes, and let yourself drift. Not on water now, but on memory, on hope, on something small and golden that's been quietly blooming inside your chest. You wake just before dawn, blanket around your shoulders, fire down to glowing coals. Grandfather's gone. Likely asleep under the ahujote. You step barefoot across the platform and look out. The lake is still glowing, fainter now, softer, but still there. You sit, write a new note. This time it's short. I lit a fire for you, and the lake answered. You draw the moon, and just beneath it, a tiny canoe with 2 people in it. You know something's different the moment the wind changes. It's subtle, just a shift in how the breeze moves through the ahujote trees. But you feel it in your skin, the kind of instinct that only comes from living close to the water, close to the soil, close to the quiet. You set down the basket of amaranth you're harvesting and straighten up slowly, scanning the canal. It's still empty. The morning sun has barely lifted over the trees, and your Chinampa is bathed in golden light. The squash blossoms are open. A heron stalks silently near your southern edge. Then you hear it. The dip of a paddle. The canoe comes into view. Not the usual runner this time. It's broader, heavier. Someone sits cross-legged in the bow, her back straight. Her tunic the soft green of jade leaves after rain. A wide straw hat shades her face. Ayal, you don't move at first. You're not sure it's real. But the canoe glides closer, and she looks up, and smiles. It's not a royal smile. Not a formal one. It's the kind of smile you'd give a duck that remembered your name. You don't say anything for the first few breaths. You help steady the canoe as she steps out onto the platform. Her sandals leave faint imprints on the woven mats. She looks around, at the tomato rows, the bundles of beans hanging to dry, the young childs just peeking through the soil. This is the Chinampa? She asks softly. You nod. She walks the rows like someone walking through memory. She doesn't touch the plants, not at first. She just looks. Every now and then she hums, a little tune you don't recognize. It makes the beans seem to lean in. I feel like I know it already, she says, crouching beside a squash blossom. I've drawn every part of it in my letters. But it's still different in person. You hand her a tomato, freshly picked. She bites in. Juice runs down her hand. She closes her eyes. Still the best. You spend the rest of the morning not working. At first, this feels wrong. There are weeds to pull, mulch to spread, a bird that has clearly built a nest in your basket again. But Ayal insists. You do enough, she says, dragging a reed mat into the shade of the tree. Today we observe. So you sit. She sketches. You sip water. She tells stories. She talks about the garden terraces she helps oversee in the city, stepped platforms climbing up temple sides, filled with herbs and ornamentals and ritual flowers. She hates the marigolds. They're bossy, she says. Always demanding sun, always shedding petals. You laugh. Your sketchbook doesn't seem to mind. She glances down at the open page. It's a drawing of you, holding a squash like a royal orb. You pretend to look scandalized. You're mocking me. She grins. No, I'm immortalizing you. At midday, you eat under the tree. You bring tortillas, salt, dried fish wrapped in maize leaves. She brings sweet tamales, dyed red with annatto and filled with soft beans. You trade half your fish for 2 tamales. She accepts graciously. The meal is quiet, companionable at one point. She points to your calloused hands. You know, she says, most nobles don't believe these places exist. You raise an eyebrow. They've heard of Chinampas, of course, in the same way they've heard of the moon. But they think the food just appears in the market stalls. They don't know what it smells like out here. You chuckle. Mostly mud. She nods. And life. Later, she helps you water the child's at first. She's overly careful, pouring just a trickle onto each plant. You tease her. She retaliates by splashing your tunic. The soil gets wetter than the plants. I'm better with drawings, she admits. That's fine, you say. I'm better with beans. She laughs. That's a terrible trade-off. By late afternoon, you're both lying on the platform again, watching the clouds move. They drift like canoes overhead. She asks you if you've ever named one of them. No, you say, but I once tried to name every frog on this Chinampa. She turns her head. How many were there? At least 400. She raises an eyebrow. I lost count around frog 87. She snorts. Then she says, softly, I think this is my favorite place. You don't respond right away that you're watching a dragonfly. It lands on her sketchbook. She watches it too, neither of you moving. Then you say, mine too. As the sun begins to set, you paddle her back to the canal's edge. The city is waiting beyond the bend, and with it, all the things that aren't Chinampas or frogs or squash. She stands in the boat as it pushes away, her hand lifted in a wave. Before she disappears, she calls back. Next time, I'm bringing my own tomatoes. You grinned at the ripples fade. You turn back to the Chinampa. The ahujotes are whispering again. You sit beneath one, unroll your mat, and watch the stars appear. You think of the drawings you haven't seen yet, and the ones you'll draw together. You awaken to the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds echoing across the lake. The air is crisp, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil and blooming flowers. As you rise from your mat, the first light of dawn casts a golden hue over the Chinampa, illuminating the vibrant tapestry of maize, beans, and squash that you've so carefully tended. Today marks a significant moment in your journey, a day when the fruits of your labor will be shared beyond the familiar confines of your floating garden. You've been invited to present your harvest at the Grand Market in the heart of Tenochtitlan, a bustling hub where merchants and farmers from all corners of the empire converge. With meticulous care, you select the finest produce. Plump tomatoes glistening with dew, fragrant herbs bundled neatly, and vibrant chiles that promise a fiery kick. Each item is a testament to the harmony between man and nature, a reflection of the ancient agricultural practices passed down through generations. As you load your canoe, the weight of anticipation settles in. The journey ahead is both literal and symbolic, a passage from the tranquility of the Chinampa to the vibrant energy of the city, from solitude to community. Paddling through the labyrinthine canals, you pass fellow farmers and traders, each navigating their own path. The waterway is alive with activity. a testament to the interconnectedness of the people and the land. Upon reaching the market, you're greeted by a cacophony of sounds, the rhythmic beat of drums, the chatter of merchants haggling over prices, and the laughter of children weaving through the crowds. Stalls overflow with goods, textiles dyed in brilliant hues, intricately crafted pottery, and an array of exotic fruits and spices. You find your designated spot and carefully arrange your offerings, taking pride in the display. Soon, curious onlookers gather, drawn by the freshness and quality of your produce. Transactions are swift, and your goods are met with enthusiasm. Amidst the flurry of activity, a familiar figure approaches, her eyes alight with excitement. She commends your efforts, noting the exceptional quality of your harvest. Together, you share a moment of quiet amidst the chaos, a connection forged through shared experiences and mutual respect as the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the market. You pack the remaining goods and prepare for the journey home. The return trip is contemplative, the day's events replaying in your mind. The market has not only provided an opportunity to share your harvest, but has also reinforced the importance of community and collaboration. Back at the Chinampa, the evening air is cool and soothing. You sit beneath the ahujo tree, reflecting on the day's experiences. The gentle lapping of water against the reeds and the chorus of nocturnal creatures create a symphony of serenity that in this moment of stillness, you recognize the profound connection between the land, the community, and yourself. The Chinampa is more than a garden. It's a living testament to resilience, tradition, and the enduring spirit of the people who cultivate it. You wake to the sound of distant trumpeting, not the sharp blast of alarm, but a low, rumbling call that vibrates through the morning mist. It's a sound you've heard before, but rarely this close. The elephants are near. Stepping onto the Chinampa, you scan the horizon. The lake is calm, its surface reflecting the pale light of dawn. But beyond the reeds, on the far bank, you catch a glimpse of movement, massive shapes stirring among the trees, elephants. A small herd, perhaps 5 or 6, grazing quietly at the water's edge. Their presence is both majestic and unsettling. In the past, such visits have been rare and usually peaceful. But lately, the elephants have been venturing closer to human settlements, drawn by the promise of easy food. You recall stories of Chinampas trampled underfoot, of crops devoured in a single night. The elephants mean no harm. They're simply following their instincts, but their size and strength make them a force to be reckoned with. As you watch, one of the elephants steps into the water, wading slowly toward the Chinampa. Your heart pounds. You know your garden can't withstand such an intrusion, but you also know that aggression will only provoke the animal. You need a plan. Recalling the advice of elders, you gather a bundle of chili peppers and toss them into the fire pit, stirring the embers until thick, acrid smoke billows upward. The scent is pungent, irritating even to your own eyes and throat. But it's a deterrent. Elephants dislike the smell. Sure enough, the approaching elephant pauses, sniffing the air. With a huff, it turns away, retreating to the safety of the herd. Relief washes over you. For now, your Chinampa is safe. But the incident serves as a reminder. Living in harmony with nature requires constant vigilance and adaptability. The elephants are not enemies. They're fellow inhabitants of this land. Finding ways to coexist is a challenge you must continue to meet. As the sun rises higher, you return to your work, tending to the plants with renewed appreciation for the delicate balance of your world. The elephants remain on the far bank, a silent presence in the background of your day. And as evening falls, you sit by the water's edge, listening to their distant calls, a lullaby of the wild that lulls you into a peaceful sleep. Tonight, you're carving a flute that it's nothing fancy, just a hollow reed you found by the canal, trimmed and smoothed and carefully notched with a stone blade. It takes patience, which you have, and silence, which the Chinampa provides in abundance after sunset. The night air hums with the chorus of frogs, the occasional splash of fish, and the whisper of the wind moving through ahujo leaves. You sit on the woven mat of your floating terrace, legs crossed, knife steady. The smell of wet reeds thick on your hands. You don't know what the flute will sound like yet. But you're not in a hurry. Earlier in the day, you and Iya had your first argument. Well, not an argument, not really. But it felt like one. You'd made a joke about city people not knowing how to plant beans. She'd laughed. But then, quietly, she'd said, "We don't all have soil under our fingernails. Doesn't mean we're useless." And then she'd gone quiet that you'd apologized. She'd accepted. But the silence after felt longer than usual. Oh, now you're carving. Not to fix anything, not really. Just because your hands need to move, and your mind needs to settle. You think better when making something. And tonight, you want to understand what went wrong. You blow softly into the flute. The sound is awful. You laughed at I in the morning. You find her note that's tied to a floating water gourd near your dock, tucked inside like a message in a bottle. It reads, "Sorry for being a squash vine. You were right. Bean knowledge is important." Beneath it, a sketch of a bean plant with little feet, walking determinately toward a city gate. You grin. You write back, "Sorry for being a prickly chili. Want to come help harvest the beans?" And below that, a sketch of a chili plant in a hat, waving sheepishly. You leave it by the same gourd, trusting it'll float back her way. That afternoon, she shows up, in no warning this time. Just appears in her canoe like a green-winged dragonfly. She doesn't say anything about the note. Just hops out and starts weeding beside you. You work in companionable silence for a while. Then, she says, "Your drawing was terrible." You nod. "My chili looked like a worm with a hat." She chuckles. "Exactly." You both laugh, and the air lightens. Together, you harvest the beans. You show her how to gently pull the pods without tearing the vine. She's awkward at first, fingers too careful, but she learns fast. You work row by row, filling baskets with the satisfying weight of ripe pods. The breeze is cool, and dragonflies hover low over the leaves. "Your grandfather's not here?" she asks. You shake your head. "He went to the southern Chinampas for seed trading." She nods, then glances up. "You always talk about him." You pause. "He taught me everything." "Do you ever want to leave?" The question catches you off guard. You sit back on your heels, bean pod in hand. "Leave?" You echo. She shrugs. "The city. Or even farther. There's more than gardens, you know." You look at the plants around you. The rows you've tended since you were small, the trees that shade you, the water that sings you to sleep. "I don't know," you say. "I've never thought about it." She doesn't push, just nods and keeps picking. But the question lingers. That night, you finish the flute that it's still not good. It wheezes more than it sings. But when you blow into it, there's a note, soft, high, wavering, like a frog hiccuping, or a wind chime made of clay. You play it once, twice, then tuck it into a pouch and sleep. You dream of vines growing in spirals, reaching up toward stars shaped like beans. The storm doesn't begin with thunder. It begins with a silence. You notice it first in the birds. The chachalakas, usually so noisy this time of day, go quiet. The dragonflies hover lower to the ground. Even the breeze seems to pause, as if holding its breath that you're kneeling beside the maize rows, checking the tassels for signs of rot. The morning sun is behind a gauze of clouds, thin and silver, and your fingers are damp from dew. That's when you smell it. Rain. Real rain. Not the misty, teasing kind that comes and goes in a breath, but monsoon rain, heavy and warm and full of purpose. You look up. The sky is darker now. The wind shifts. Grandfather is already moving. He doesn't say a word, just ties back the reed door of your hut, pulls the canoe farther up onto the floating terrace, and begins stacking the clay pots under the awning. You do the same. No one panics. You've done this before, but something in the air feels different. The first drops fall just past midday. They arrive slowly, in heavy, warm plinks that darken the soil and leave craters in the canal. You tilt your face up, let them strike your forehead and eyelids and cheeks. Io is supposed to arrive this evening. You doubt she will now. You hope she's safe. You check the supports of the terrace, cinch the woven walls tighter with extra rope. The reed mats flutter and flap, and the air grows cooler. Then it begins in earnest. The sky cracks open like a dropped pot, and the rain comes down in sheets. You sit under the awning, wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of bean leaves and smoke. The rain pounds the roof above like 1,000 tiny feet. You can't see far beyond the trees. The lake is a blur, but you can hear the world responding. Frogs croaking in riotous joy, water rushing through the irrigation channels, the bamboo whistle of reeds as they bend under the weight of it all. Grandfather is making tea. I remember the storm of '63, he says, his voice almost drowned by the downpour. That one knocked a whole section of the west bank into the canal. You glance over. He's using the good pot. Cinnamon bark floats at the surface, dancing with the heat. You were how old? You asked. He shrugs. Old enough to swim. Barely. You sip your tea, grateful for the heat. Did you rebuild it? He looks at you like you've asked whether fish can swim. Of course, he says. We always rebuild. The rain doesn't stop that night. Or the next. It slows now and then to a drizzle, then picks up again with renewed force. You watch from the hut window as the water level rises. The Chinampa holds. It always holds, but parts of it grow spongier, soaked to saturation. You and Grandfather take shifts sleeping. He snores lightly when it's his turn. You lay awake, listening to the wind. On the third day, it stops, not all at once. The clouds linger, sulky and gray, but the air begins to feel thinner, lighter. The frogs are the first to announce it. Then the birds. Then, cautiously, the sun. The Chinampa is sodden, but intact. You step outside and squish. The ahujotes drip steadily. The beans have flattened in places, but the maize stands proud. You kneel and gently brush dirt from the squash blossoms, checking for rot. It's not bad. You've seen worse. You know what to do. The next few days are a blur of labor. You and Grandfather lay new compost in the walkways to soak up the moisture. You replace damaged reeds along the banks. You guide overflow water back into the canal with your hands and feet and tools. It's exhausting work, but strangely satisfying. The Chinampa comes back to life, bit by bit. The sun grows warmer. The soil darkens to that perfect, earthy black. And then, one morning, Io returns. For you hear her before you see her. Her flute does a soft note, carried on the wind like a secret. You look up from the tomato rows and there she is, standing in her canoe, hair braided back, skirt damp with spray. She lifts a hand in greeting. You wave her in. I thought you drowned. You tease, helping her tie the canoe to the platform. I nearly did, she says, wringing water from her sash. The city courtyard's flooded. My brother's ducks escaped. You raise an eyebrow. Where did they go? Everywhere. One of them tried to buy fish at the market. You laugh. It feels good to laugh. She walks the rows with you, silent at first. She notices the patches of fresh compost, the new willow supports for the beans. You rebuilt already, she says. You nod. We always do. She kneels beside the squash vines, fingers tracing the damp leaves. I missed this, she says quietly. You sit beside her. So did I. That evening, she sketches while you stir a pot of beans over the fire. You ask what she's drawing. She shows you that it's a chinampa in the rain, but not yours. Not exactly. It floats in a dreamier landscape. The plants are slightly exaggerated. The trees bend in shapes that wouldn't happen in real life. The clouds form strange swirls. But it's beautiful. I call it your garden's dream, she says. You smile. It's a good dream. She folds the sketch and hands it to you. It's yours. You tuck it into your pouch, near all the others. The night is cool, the stars hidden behind lingering cloud. But the frogs sing again. The canal is calm. You and Aya sit shoulder to shoulder on the platform, her head resting lightly against yours. Neither of you says much. And for once, you don't need to. The storm is past. The garden endures. The seeds will grow. And you are still here. You know the rain has truly ended when the first butterflies return. Point 1, then 2, then dozens, fluttering like scraps of silk over the chinampa. Their wings flash ochre, lapis, and cream. They seem confused at first, circling in the warm mist like dancers looking for their partners. Then they settle, on squash leaves, on corn tassels, even on your shoulder. You laugh. You haven't laughed much in days. The storm has passed, but its memory still clings to everything. The scent of soaked soil, the bent bean trellises, the low stretch of sky still bruised with thunderclouds far to the east. The chinampa didn't sink, but it buckled, and now it breathes. So do you. You run your hand along the edge of a squash vine, inspecting. Some leaves are torn, but the fruit is intact. A maize stalk leans precariously, and you straighten it, whispering like it's a child. You're all right. I've got you. In the distance, a canoe moves. Familiar. Steady. Ayal. She arrives carrying a bundle of waxy flowers and a note rolled in bark paper. She steps out and squelches slightly on the reed mat, then lifts her eyebrows. You're mud now. So are you. You say. Then we're perfectly matched. Today, you repair. Not just the chinampa, but yourselves. Your rhythm. The companionship that, for all its quiet steadiness, still needs tending. You begin with the outer banks. The reeds held, mostly, but one section sagged during the storm. Together, you weave in fresh ones. Aya handing you the strands, you pressing them into the mud, grandfather nodding approval from the background like a silent deity of agriculture. You know, she says after a while, this would make a good dance. You pause. Weaving. She nods. Step left, twist, press. Repeat. You try it. Too slow. She bumps your hip with hers. That's your fault. You laugh. Again. Later, she follows you to the compost mound. The storm soaked it, of course, but it still steams in the center. You part the surface gently with your shovel, revealing a world of heat and transformation. Orange peels, cracked maize cobs, shredded bark, all breaking down into something rich and black and humming with life. Smells like ambition, she says, wrinkling her nose. Smells like lunch, you say. In a few weeks. You spread the compost across the bean beds. She helps. The air is thick with humidity and the perfume of wild mint crushed underfoot. Above you, dragonflies spiral in lazy arcs. You take a break under the ahujode. Ayal pulls out her sketchbook. You watch as she draws. Not you, this time, but your hands. Mud-streaked, calloused, steady. These could be anyone's, she says. You tilt your head. I mean, she adds, they're universal. Like they belong to every gardener who ever lived. You don't know how to respond to that. So you offer her a slice of roasted pumpkin seed cake instead. She accepts. That evening, grandfather brings out something rare, a clay whistle, shaped like a frog that he sets it in Iowa's palm. For when the rain comes again, he says. She lifts it to her lips and blows. The sound is eerily perfect, like a real frog, half singing, half laughing. You startle. She grins. You have to teach me, you say. Grandfather shrugs. You're too serious. I'm not. Ayal plays it again. The Chinampas seems to smile. After dinner, you sit on the terrace as the sky fades from bruised purple to deep navy. Ayal rests beside you, legs stretched out, fingers loosely curled around the whistle. Grandfather has already retreated to the hut, muttering something about dreams needing quiet. You watch the stars come out. They survived the storm too. Ayal murmurs. You nod. She looks at you. Do you think we'll be here, doing this, next season? You don't answer right away. Then, only if you bring better jokes. She grins. Deal. Before she leaves, she tucks the frog whistle into your hand. For your serious days, she says. You watch her canoe disappear into the mist. Then you hold the whistle to your lips, and for the first time, you sing to the Chinampa. The frogs sing back. The morning sun casts a golden hue over the Chinampa, illuminating the dew-kissed leaves and the still waters of the canal. You stretch, feeling the warmth seep into your bones, and take a deep breath of the fresh, earthy air. The storm has passed, leaving behind a renewed sense of tranquility as you go about your morning routine. Tending to the plants and checking the irrigation channels, you notice a peculiar sight. A small group of elephants is gathered at the edge of the forest, their massive forms silhouetted against the trees. They seem calm, grazing peacefully and occasionally spraying water over their backs. You watch them for a while, marveling at their grace and strength. The elephants have always been a part of your world, revered and respected. They are symbols of wisdom and power, and their presence is considered auspicious. Later in the day, Ayal arrives, her canoe gliding silently through the canal. She brings with her a basket of fresh herbs and a smile that warms your heart. Together, you prepare a simple meal, sharing stories and laughter as the sun climbs higher in the sky. As the day progresses, you and Ayal decide to visit the elephants. You approach cautiously, making soft noises to announce your presence. The elephants acknowledge you with gentle rumbles, their eyes calm and curious. You offer them some of the herbs Ayal brought, which they accept with surprising delicacy. Sitting under the shade of a large tree, you watch the elephants interact, their social bonds evident in their gentle touches and synchronized movements. Aya sketches them, capturing their essence with swift, confident strokes. You feel a deep sense of connection, not just to the elephants, but to the world around you. As evening falls, you return to the Chinampa, the sky painted with hues of orange and pink. The air is filled with the sounds of crickets and the distant calls of night birds. You and Aya sit by the canal, feet dangling over the edge, watching the stars emerge one by one. In the quiet of the night, you reflect on the day's events. The presence of the elephants, the shared moments with Aya, the harmony of nature, all of it fills you with a profound sense of peace and gratitude. You realize that life, much like the Chinampa, is a delicate balance of elements, each one essential to the whole. And as you drift off to sleep, the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft murmur of the canal lull you into a deep, restful slumber. The harvest moon is rising. You watch it from the edge of your Chinampa, its reflection shimmering across the canal like a coin dropped into ink. The air is cool but not cold, scented with damp earth and drying maize. You sit with your knees tucked under your chin, your hands dusty from gathering chiles and beans all afternoon. Tonight is the full moon festival, but here on the Chinampa, it's quiet. You told Io not to come this time. The city is celebrating with drums and firelight and dances in the temple courtyards. You didn't want her to miss it. And truth be told, you wanted a moment alone, with the Chinampa, with the silence, with the kind of slow contentment that comes only after work well done. Grandfather is already asleep. The crops are harvested and covered. You light a small oil lamp and place it by the canal's edge. The flame dances, casting flickers across the water and the reeds. From a pouch at your belt, you pull out the last sketch Aya gave you. A picture of the Chinampa at night, stars stitched into the sky like tiny maize kernels. You lay it on the mat beside you and smile. The air hums with frog song. The day began before sunrise. You were up with the birds, checking the vines. The rain from last week had been kind, and the beans were thick on their stalks, the squash ripe and heavy. Your fingers moved with practiced ease. Pluck, twist, gather, tuck. Each motion part of a rhythm that lives in your muscles now. Older than you are, grandfather joined you later, nodding approvingly at the full baskets. This is a harvest worth a story, he said. You asked if he'd tell it. He said maybe. After tamales you worked up by midday. You had 6 full baskets. 1 for maize, 1 for beans, 1 for squash, 1 for chiles, 1 for herbs, and 1, a gift basket, for Io, filled with the most perfect examples of each. The crimson chili with the curl like a serpent, the maize cob with exactly 24 rows, the squash that looked like a tiny moon. You tied it with a reed ribbon and tucked in a note. For the one who sketches better than the moon glows. You'd leave it for her tomorrow, but today was about the land. After the harvest, you cooked, nothing fancy, just roasted squash with wild garlic, beans mashed with chili and salt, and small cakes of amaranth and honey. Grandfather told you a story while you cooked. Not the harvest one. Another he spoke of a Chinampa that once grew entirely white crops, albino maize, pale beans, go squash. The farmer believed it made the food easier for the moon to find. One night, the moon came down and asked for a meal. You laughed. Did the moon like it? Grandfather shrugged. Moon ate everything. Never said thank you. Typical noble. You both chuckled, the fire crackling between you. After the meal, grandfather wrapped himself in a blanket and nodded off on the mat. You cleaned up, folded the baskets, arranged the herbs to dry. And then you came here to the edge of the Chinampas, to wait for the moon to climbs higher now, painting the water silver. You can see bats flickering across the sky, diving for insects. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays, faint, dreamy, like someone trying to remember a lullaby. You lean back and close your eyes. You think of Io. You imagine her standing in a torchlit square, her sketchbook tucked under one arm, watching dancers swirl in circles of firelight. You imagine her catching your gift basket in the morning, untying the ribbon, laughing at your note. You wonder if she's thinking of you too. You reach for your own flute, the one you carved from reed weeks ago. It still doesn't sound perfect. But tonight, you don't care. You play soft notes, like water over pebbles. A tune that has no name. One that rises and falls with the rhythm of the frogs, the rustle of reeds, the sigh of moonlight. The Chinampa listens, and the night, somehow, feels whole. Later, you dream. You are underwater, but not drowning. Floating. The lake is clear, and beneath you, roots hang down from the Chinampa like long braids. Fish weave through them, flashing gold and black. You see the reflection of the moon, but when you reach up to touch it, it ripples like a curtain and becomes Iowa's face. Laughing, then vanishing, you wake to silence. The lamp has gone out, but the moon is still there, steady as ever, watching. You curl into your blanket and smile. The harvest is in. The Chinampa is strong, and love, like maize, grows best when given room to breathe. Morning arrives soft and golden. The mist hasn't yet lifted from the lake when you step out, still barefoot, onto the dew-damp earth of the Chinampa. The air smells like wood smoke and crushed herbs, and somewhere in the reeds, a heron snaps its wings and glides low over the water. Your breath forms little clouds. You stretch your arms, feeling every muscle still aching pleasantly from yesterday's harvest. Then, basket in hand, you wade into the shallows to check the roots. You do this every few weeks now. Your grandfather calls it listening to the ground through the water. It's part inspection, part ritual, part quiet conversation between you and the floating garden that feeds you. You kneel beside the edge and lift away the mat of reeds and vines. Beneath it, a tangle of roots dips into the lake bed, thick with algae and silt. You run your fingers along them gently. They're healthy, firm, anchored, pulsing with the silent work of growth. Fish dart among them, flickers of bronze and silver. Grandfather joins you quietly, settling beside you with his own basket and a piece of charcoal. He draws what he sees, the root knots, the angles, the thicknesses, onto a strip of bark paper. He's been recording them all year. You speak little. The work doesn't need words. Nearby, Iowa's herbs wave gently in the wind. She'll come soon. But for now, this moment belongs to you and your grandfather. You pass him a stick and he nods. Together, you gently remove a tangle of dead vines, clear away a silt-choked channel. He points to one section, narrower than the rest. That needs reinforcing, he murmurs. It will erode in the next storm. You nod that you'll need fresh reeds, and a day without wind. But it's fixable. Everything, in time, is fixable. Afterward, you sit back, wiping your hands on your tunic. The sun has climbed higher, and dragonflies skim the surface of the water. Your grandfather hands you a square of amaranth cake. Eat, he says. Even the earth doesn't work without food. You smile and bite in. The rest of the morning passes in quiet repair. You braid reeds into ropes. Your grandfather weaves them into the frame. You notice where the soil has shifted, where the algae's thickest. Small things, but they add up. A good chinampa is like a boat. It floats only because everything is exactly where it needs to be. Ayao arrives in the afternoon, her satchel full of dried herbs and a grin on her face. "You left me a basket," she says by way of greeting, with a note that made my mother laugh for a full minute. You grin. She sets to work beside you, humming as she lays out bundles of wormwood and chiltepin. Her presence changes the rhythm. The chinampa, once steady and slow, now hums a little livelier. You can feel it by evening. The repairs are done. You and Ayah sit on the southern edge, legs dangling over the water. Your grandfather has gone to rest. The wind is soft. The lake is calm. You watch the water together, and after a while she says, "You know, this garden, this whole place, reminds me of a heart." You blink. A heart. She nods. Always working, always rooted, always listening, even when it's quiet. You look down at the water, at the dark roots drifting beneath the surface. Maybe she's right. You nudge her elbow gently. "And what does that make us?" She smiles. The breath that keeps it beating. You wake to the sound of a paddle slicing water that it's not loud. Not a splash, just a steady rhythm. You know that sound. You've known it since childhood, since the first time your grandfather took you into the canals in his low wooden canoe, teaching you to move silently, to read the ripples and shadows. You sit up. The sky is still gray, not quite dawn, and the mists hang low over the water like silk dropped from the sky. Your chinampa is still quiet. Even the birds haven't begun their morning songs yet. But the paddle keeps moving. You step onto the mat-covered bank and wait that a canoe glides into view. I.O. Of course, she's brought breakfast. The tamales are still warm, wrapped in maize husks and tied with twine. There's also a clay cup of spiced chocolate, thick and gritty the way you both like it. You sit together on the woven mat, facing the canal, watching the mist slowly lift from the water as the world wakes around you. Neither of you speaks at first. You just eat, watching the surface shift and shimmer with hints of fish below, a heron lifting its long legs slowly on the opposite bank, a spider dragging its dew-drenched web across a broken reed. Finally, she says, "I dreamed of snow." You turn. "Have you ever seen snow?" She shakes her head. "Only in drawings. There was a mountain in the dream, and we were farming it, like a chinampa in the clouds." You nod. You can imagine it, and suddenly, you want to see it, too. The morning is spent in shared silence. You work the beds. Aya helps you reseed one patch of squash lost in the last storm. Your hands move confidently now. The soil is dark and rich again. Worms curl lazily under the surface. Tiny shoots are already sprouting from your last planting. While you dig, she tells you about a merchant she met in the city. "He grows orchids," she says. "In baskets. In the air." "In the air?" She nods. "No soil, just light and mist. He hangs them from trees. Says they drink the sky." You try to imagine this. Roots curling like calligraphy in the breeze, flowers blooming above your head. "He wants to try it here," she adds. "Wants to pay me to draw it." You smile. "You should." She shrugs. "Only if you help." Later, you paddle out to the center of the lake. Not far, just to the spot where the water feels deeper, stiller, as if the bottom has sunk away and left only sky below. The light has turned warm now, the mists burned off by the sun, and the air is full of dragonflies and pollen. You both lie in the canoe, side by side, heads at opposite ends, watching the clouds drift above. Aya says, "Do you ever wonder what's at the bottom?" You say fish, mud, old bones. She says, "That's what I thought. But once I dreamed it was a city." You wait. She continues, "A drowned city, with temples and music, and people who live underwater and grow gardens out of coral." You chuckle. "Do they eat fish?" She nods. "But only the ones who volunteer." You laugh harder now. The canoe rocks gently. Above you, a hawk makes lazy circles the BY afternoon. You've returned to the Chinampa. Aya paints while you spread drying herbs on a reed rack. The scent of mint and marigold fills the air. Bees hum nearby, ignoring you. Her painting is strange today, more abstract. Swirls of color, tangled roots, stars hiding among leaves. You don't ask what it means. You think maybe you know. You bring her a drink of cooled hibiscus tea, and she holds it up like a toast. "To cities underwater and orchids in the air," she says, "and to beans in the mud." You add. She grins. That evening, grandfather joins you both for the first time in a while. He's wearing his oldest tunic, faded and soft from years of sun and work. He sits beside the canal, his legs outstretched, and listens as you and Io recount the day's thoughts. Floating cities, sky flowers, missed breakfast. He nods slowly. "There's truth in all of it," he says. You ask, "Even the fish that volunteer?" He chuckles. "Especially those." He tells you a story then, one you've never heard. About the time he got lost in the canals as a boy and followed the sound of a flute until he found a woman who gave him a gourd full of glowing water. He drank it, and when he returned home, the maize in his garden was twice as tall. You and I all listen, wrapped in blankets as the night comes down. You don't ask if it's true. You hope it is. Before bed, you write a note for yourself. Don't forget the sky has roots, too. You're not sure what it means yet, but you think maybe you will. You wake with the sun already high. Unusual for you. The light pours through the woven reed wall, warm and insistent. You blink a few times, your body still heavy with sleep, the sweet ache of yesterday's work lingering in your shoulders. Grandfather must have let you sleep in. You sit up and stretch, the blanket slipping off your shoulders. Outside, the Chinampa hums softly with the rhythm of a calm day. Bees drifting lazily between squash blossoms, the wind rustling the maize. Dragonflies hovering like slow-moving stars. You hear the thump of a paddle in the water. Io again as she's early. You throw on your tunic, finger comb your hair, and step barefoot onto the platform just in time to see her rounding the bend. She waves. There's no sketchbook in her hand today, just a woven basket and a folded note in her belt. You wave back and feel something shift, like a stone sinking slowly into clear water. Today feels different. Breakfast is warm amaranth porridge with crushed nuts and honey. Aya helps you stir while grandfather sorts seeds by color, red beans from white, maize by kernel depth. He works in silence, eyes half-lidded, the way he does when thinking deeply. Aya eats quickly, then stands. "I want to show you something," she says. You follow. She leads you beyond the edge of your Chinampa, across the low bridges that connect the floating gardens like stepping stones. Past the ones where you've helped neighbors plant sunroot. Past the place with the old canoe that no one uses anymore. Past even the reed beds where herons stand like patient shadows. Then into the shaded cove. You didn't even know it existed. A circle of willow trees encloses a tiny bay, no larger than a small courtyard. The water here is deeper, darker, but so still it reflects the trees with perfect symmetry. In the center floats a new Chinampa. Small, unplanted. I built this, she says. You blink. When? The last few weeks. While you were fixing your squash beds. You step closer, eyes scanning the clean lines of the frame, the fresh soil mounded in precise rows. I didn't want to say anything until it was ready, she adds. But now, I think it is. You look at her. She doesn't meet your gaze. I want to build it with you, she says. Not just today. Always. Your breath catches. You step onto the Chinampa. It rocks slightly, then steadies. You kneel and press your palm to the soil. It's warm, damp, waiting, then you smile. Let's plant it. You spend the day building a life together. You don't speak about it, not directly. You don't have to. Every handful of soil shared, every hole dug for a seed, every moment she passes you a tool or leans over to adjust the angle of a beanpole, it's all a conversation. You plant maize in a crescent near the back. She lines the front with wild greens and edible flowers. A border of beauty and flavor. In the center. You lay out space for squash and beans. You argue lightly over the best orientation. You win, but only because she lets you. Lunch is dried fruit and roasted maize cakes, eaten with muddy fingers and bare feet swinging over the water's edge. You rinse your hands in the canal. Then she pulls out the note. From my brother, she says. You glance at it. The handwriting is uneven, like someone wrote while standing. She explains. He wants me to move back, to help with the shop. You nod slowly. Do you want to? She shakes her head before you even finish. I just wanted you to know. You don't reply. You take the note gently from her hands, fold it smaller, and place it under a stone at the corner of the new Chinampa. Let the wind take it later till you're not worried. Afternoon fades into golden hour. You and I sit with your backs against a bundle of drying maize stalks, watching the light move across the water. She hums softly, something familiar, though you can't place the tune. You close your eyes and just listen. When you open them, she's drawing again. This time it's not the landscape. It's you. You blush. She notices. Don't move. She warns, half smiling. You don't. The breeze rises. A bird calls across the lake. Then her hand stops. She tears the page out, folds it, and presses it into your hands. Don't open it now, she says. Later. You nod. That night, you can't sleep. Not for worry. Not for discomfort. Just full. The kind of fullness that comes after a perfect day. Like your spirit has eaten something rich and needs time to digest it. You step outside. The stars are out in force tonight. Thousands of them. Reflected in the water, they double, as if the universe has roots, like your plants, reaching down into the deep. You sit by the canal and pull out her folded sketch. You open it. It's not just you. It's the two of you. Sitting together on the Chinampa, backs against the maize, stars above, roots below, but the roots from your bodies intertwine, stretching deep, curling around each other, forming a single base. You trace them with your finger, feeling something inside you settle. Tomorrow, there will be more work. Storms will come again. But tonight, you are rooted, and that, for now, is enough. You wake to the sound of leaves brushing leaves, like old parchment sliding against itself. It's early. Not cold, exactly, but the air has shifted. You can feel it in your bones and in the bird song, which is sharper this morning, quicker. As if the sparrows and grackles know something you don't yet. Autumn is coming. Not with trumpets, not with falling snow, but slowly, on quiet feet and golden wind. You feel it in the way the air settles on your skin, in the length of shadows beneath the ahujotes, and the scent of the soil. Earthier now, thicker. Aya hasn't arrived yet, but you're not worried. You know she'll come. You dress slower than usual, your limbs warm and loose from a good night's sleep. You feel heavy, but in the good way. The way trees must feel when their roots grow a little deeper. You walk out onto the Chinampa. The water is glassed that a heron stands at the far end, one leg raised, watching you like a pale sentry. You begin your day the old way. By listening. You crouch low to the squash, press your fingers into the soil, and wait. For years, grandfather taught you that plants speak if you listen correctly. Not in words, but in signals. The droop of a leaf, the shine of its wax, the give of the stem when touched. Today, the squash are content, the beans hum quietly. The maize whispers encouragement. You smile and rise, stretching out your arms to greet the sun. Then you begin to water. It takes longer these days. The plants are larger now, hungrier. The sun is lower, its angle changing. You carry your reed bucket from bed to bed, dipping it into the canal and pouring gently. You sing while you work. Not a song you know, just a melody that wanders like a reed in the wind. Your voice is soft, cracked with sleep, but steady. The canal answers with frog croaks and the plip of fish. Somewhere, a turtle slides into the water with a soft splash. You nod. The Chinampa is listening. Aya arrives at midday. You hear her flute before you see her. Always the same tune now. Her "I'm here but I want to scare the birds" melody. You wave as she pulls up, and she grins, cheeks flushed from paddling. She's brought a bundle of old paper and bark parchment, rolled tightly in cloth. Seeds, she says, unrolling them. You look, but they're not seeds, they're maps. Tiny hand-drawn maps of Chinampas all over the lake basin. Old ones, new ones, abandoned ones. She spreads them across the mat, weighting corners with clay pebbles and dried beans. I've been visiting them, she explains. Sketching, asking questions, learning what's still alive. You raise your eyebrows. All of these? She nods. Not alone. There's a woman in the south who collects their names. She says if we don't draw them, we'll forget where they were. You touch one of the maps. A narrow Chinampa near the eastern edge. You remember it vaguely, dry, half-submerged, overgrown. She said we could help restore it. Aya adds, just plant one row. You nod. You'll go. The journey takes 2 days. You and Aya pack light. Dried squash strips, a pouch of beans, some hard bread, and a jar of chili paste. Grandfather stays behind, muttering something about young legs and old roots. But you know he's proud. The canals are long and winding. You pass egrets, children fishing, a man floating asleep in his canoe. Every few hours, you stop to stretch, to snack, to let your fingers trail in the cool water. You camp beneath an old willow. At night, Aya paints the moonlight on the water. You cook beans and watch the steam rise. You talk about nothing. What clouds look like, whether fish have dreams, what frogs would write if they had ink. She falls asleep with her head on your shoulder. You don't move. The next day, you reach the Chinampa. It's not dead, but it's tired. The soil is hard. The plants are few. A single crooked bean vine struggles along a broken reed trellis. The canal edges are caving in. Aya kneels beside the bean vine and touches it gently. It tried, she says. You nod. Together, you begin. You start by clearing debris, old twine, cracked pots, dead stalks. You fill holes with fresh mud. You braid new reed walls. You lay compost. You dig with your hands until your nails are black and your palms sting. Aya draws and sings while she works. You whistle and by sunset. The Chinampa breathes again. You sit side by side, sipping water from a gourd, your bodies sore, your souls strangely light. It's just one row, you say. She smiles. That's how everything begins. When you return, grandfather is waiting. He doesn't ask questions. Just hands you a bowl of hot stew and tells you where the frogs have been nesting since you left. Then he goes to bed. You and Io eat in silence that you're too tired for anything else, but you feel full in every sense. After she leaves, you sit by the canal. You take out one of her maps and trace the line slowly. The roots of this lake are deeper than water. They are people and stories. And one-row gardens restored by love. You wake to the sound of laughter. Not loud, not raucous, but gentle, like rain falling on clay tiles that I tee first. You think you're dreaming. But then you hear it again. Iowa's laugh, bright and breathy, mingling with grandfather's deeper, throatier chuckle. It pulls you out of sleep like a hook, gently tugging you toward the surface. You stretch, bones clicking like old reeds, and step outside. The morning is thick with mist. It clings to the trees, the water, the roof of your hut. The Chinampa glistens, the damp soil catching the light like crushed obsidian. The air is warm, unseasonably so, and smells of wet leaves and roasting maize. You follow the sound of voices there in the back garden plot. Aya and grandfather, kneeling side by side, sorting through a basket of old seed gourds. You lean against a tree and watch them for a moment. Aya is wearing her work tunic, short sleeves, cinched at the waist with a belt made of braided grass. Her hair is tied back in a loose knot, a pencil tucked behind her ear. Grandfather is explaining something with his hands, drawing patterns in the dirt. You clear your throat. Aya looks up and grins. Finally awake, sleeping frog? You smirk. I was dreaming important dreams. Grandfather waves you over. Then come plant them. They're sorting seed gourds by type, not just by plant, but by story. This one, grandfather says, holding up a pale gourd with dark stripes, only grows on Chinampas that face the sunrise. And this one, Io adds, showing a round, squat one with a dimpled base, refuses to sprout unless it's been sung to. You raise an eyebrow. Who decides this? They both shrug. You know better than to ask again. You join them. The task is slow, repetitive, but satisfying. For each gourd, you cut it open, remove the dried pulp, sift through the seeds. Some you toss into the compost. Others you lay carefully on a woven mat to dry. The seeds are tiny, but they feel heavy with history. Aya tells you the name of each variety as you go, some in Nahuatl, some in whispers, some invented on the spot. You pretend to argue, but you let her win. After a while, she begins sketching the seeds, blown up in size, like constellations. Grandfather dozes off, leaning against a basket of husks. You watch the way Iowa's fingers move, the way she squints slightly as she works. You think about what it would be like to do this every day. Not just now, not just here, but always. Side by side, building something with hands and laughter and ink. You think, maybe, that's what planting really means at noon. The sun breaks through the mist. You gather the drying seeds and lay them out in the sun, rotating the mats so the heat hits evenly. Grandfather wakes and disappears into the hut. Aya stands beside you, stretching, her arms over her head, her spine arching like a bow. Hungry? She asks. You nod. She pulls a bundle from her basket. Mashed bean cakes wrapped in amaranth leaves, sprinkled with sesame. She breaks one in half and hands it to you. You eat in silence. The breeze lifts the drying mats slightly. Birds flit through the air, chirping with renewed purpose. Somewhere in the distance, a drumbeat echoes, faint, rhythmic, like a memory. After lunch, you walk the perimeter of the Chinampa. You do this often, checking the reed walls, inspecting for signs of wear or rot, ensuring the corners are anchored. Today, Ayal walks with you. She points out things you've never noticed. A wasp nest tucked beneath the upper branches of the ahujote, a single pink bloom nestled in the bean row, a patch of moss shaped like a rabbit. You tease her for seeing stories in everything. She teases you for missing them. You stop beside the canal and sit. Across the water, smoke curls from a distant hut. A heron lifts off, wings outstretched like an open fan. "I've been thinking," Aya says quietly. You glance over. She's pulling something from her satchel, a small roll of bark paper bound with a red cord. She hands it to you. You untie it. Inside is a drawing, not of a Chinampa or a plant, or even of you, but of two hands, yours and hers, cupped around a single seed. Beneath it, she's written, "Let's build something that grows forever." You don't speak. You just reach for her hand. The rest of the afternoon is spent in planning, not grand plans. Just quiet, whispered ones. What to plant next season? Which compost mix yields the best roots? Where to build a shared storehouse? How to braid the reeds into a bench? She suggests a floating shade structure. You suggest an overhead vine trellis. She draws. You measure by evening. You have a rough map sketched in the dirt, a tangle of lines, arrows, symbols only the two of you understand. It looks like nonsense. It feels like home. That night, grandfather cooks. He uses the last of the smoked fish, mixes it with maize and herbs, and serves it with chili broth. He doesn't ask about the plans, but he sees the map. He sees the way you look at each other. He doesn't need to ask. After dinner, he sings a song you've only heard once before, an old planting song, sung low and rough, meant to coax seeds into life. Ayal hums along. Eyes closed, you lie back on the mat, hands folded across your chest, listening. The stars are out. The air is cool. The Chinampa breathes. You think of seeds in the dark, of roots threading down, of stories waiting in the soil, of hands, hers and yours, tending them gently, day after day, not because they must, but because they can. You wake in the blue hour, that sliver of time before dawn when the sky is a deep indigo and the world feels like it's holding its breath. The air is cool, and there's a hush across the Chinampa, as if the trees, the water, and the wind have agreed to be silent for a while, just to let you listen. You sit up slowly, brush a mosquito from your arm, and wrap your blanket around your shoulders. The hut is still dark, but you can hear grandfather stirring in the back corner, his breathing a little louder than usual, his bones creaking as he shifts. Outside, the water is still. You light a small lamp and carry it to the edge of the platform. The flame flickers, golden against the blue shadows. It's the kind of morning that feels holy. Ayal arrives just as the first streak of sunlight hits the tops of the ahujote trees. You hear the soft thrum of her paddle and turn to see her canoe slipping through the mist like a ghost. She's wearing a new cloak, deep green, embroidered at the edges, and her hair is braided back in two long ropes. Her eyes are bright. "You're up early," she says. "So are you. Only for something important." You tilt your head. "And what's that?" She smiles. "The last planting." It's not really the last. There will be winter vegetables and spring seedlings and always some kind of tending. But today marks the final planting of the cycle you began together months ago, on the Chinampa you built side by side, that you've saved the best seeds. The most promising maize, the juiciest squash, the beans with skins like polished garnet. You carry them in small woven baskets, each lined with a strip of rabbit fur to keep them warm and dry. Together, you paddle to the new Chinampa. The mist clings to the water as you go. The world is hushed. You step onto the floating garden with bare feet. The soil is cool, damp, rich with compost and promise. Ion kneels and places the first seed. You place the second. You alternate, bean, squash, maize, working in slow rhythm. Your fingers brush. Once, your knees touch. You don't speak, but every seed is a word. By midday, the Chinampa hums with life. The soil has swallowed your hopes. The sun has warmed your backs. The air smells of green things and effort. You lie side by side beneath the awning you built 2 weeks ago. Just a roof of palm fronds tied with reed cord, but enough to cast shade. Ayal fans herself with a folded sketch. You offer her a bite of tamale. She takes it without looking, her eyes on the sky. I used to think of floating gardens as strange, she says. Too perfect, too artificial. You glance at her. She adds, but now I see they're just disciplined dreams. You nod. A place for wild things to learn manners. She laughs, the sound carrying across the water. Later, you build a shrine. Nothing elaborate, just a small hollow in the Chinampa's corner, edged with smooth stones. Inside, you place symbols, a maize kernel, a reed flute, a piece of bark paper with a sketch of your first plant. Ayao adds a tiny gourd filled with seeds. You press your fingers together and whisper a blessing, half invented, half remembered. For the roots to be bold, you say. For the vines to find light, she adds. For the soil to hold our names. You both fall silent. Then she whispers, and for love to take its time. You squeeze her hand. That evening, you return to the main Chinampa. Grandfather is waiting with bowls of atoll and a pot of hot stew. He says nothing about the shrine, but he nods once, slowly, as if to say, good. You eat under the stars, legs stretched out, Ayal leaning against your shoulder. The air is thick with night sounds, frogs, crickets, the creak of reeds in the breeze. When the fire burns low, Grandfather tells a story, not about gardens or gods, but about a time when he ran away as a boy, angry at his father, and got lost in the farm marshes. I was gone 2 days, he says. Cried the whole second night. Ayal asks, what brought you back? He smiles. I heard my mother's laugh. Carried across the water. You sit in silence for a long time after that, listening, hoping, promising, silently, never to wander far. Before bed, Ayal pulls something from her cloak, a small knife, bone-handled, with carvings on the blade. My grandfather gave this to me, she says. When I left home, you run your fingers along the hilt. She places it in your hand. I want you to keep it, she says. You shake your head. It's yours. I know, but we share things now. You don't argue. You just wrap it in cloth and place it beside your sleeping mat, close enough to feel. Not because you fear, but because it reminds you. Love protects what grows, even in sleep. The sun is lower now, not just in the sky, but in your bones, your breath, the tempo of each day. The seasons are tilting, and even the ahujotes, usually so confident in their green cloaks, have begun to yellow at the edges. You notice it when you walk the canal paths, a slow shifting, like a blanket being drawn over the lake one fold at a time, that you've lived many months now on this Chinampa. And today, for the first time, it feels like something is ending, not in a sad way. More like the last page of a very good book. You start your morning with tea, steeped from dried mint and lemony herbs that Aya tucked into the bundles weeks ago. You sit alone on the eastern platform, knees to your chest, watching the sun climb up through a soft mist that it's quiet. The frogs are still. Even the birds seem to be waiting. You let your mind drift, not far, not fast, just gently, like a canoe adrift without paddles, held in place by nothing but memory. You think of your first day here, of grandfather's quiet instruction, of the blisters on your palms, of the scent of compost, and learning, and something else, something you didn't have a word for then. Hope, maybe, or just the start of belonging. Io arrives with her arms full of baskets, but she's brought peppers. Red, yellow, green, tiny ones that look like curled fingers, fat ones that resemble twisted hearts. And she's laughing. You said we needed color, she says. I brought a rainbow. You take the baskets from her and line them up along the walkway. They make a parade of hues, vivid against the weathered wood. Grandfather appears then, silently as always, and nods once he begins slicing peppers for drying. Io sketches the moment, his curved back, your hands busy, the basket spilling over. I want to remember this, she says. Forever? She shrugs. Or at least until the paper crumbles. You smile. The day passes in a rhythm of work and stillness. You dry peppers, shell beans, untangle vines. Grandfather naps by the canal. Io hums while she paints the tops of your seed jars. Later, a neighbor paddles by with a gift, candied amaranth, stuck together in rough cubes, still warm from her fire. You trade her a handful of dried squash chips, and no words are needed. The lake speaks in gestures. In gratitude. By sunset, the Chinampas smells like smoke and sweetness that you've lit the small hearth for. One last shared meal. Grandfather roasts maize. Aya stirs bean paste over the coals. You pour hot atoll into clay mugs and pass them around. It's the simplest meal you've eaten in weeks. It's the best. Aya proposes a toast. To good soil, she says. Grandfather raises his cup. To water that remembers. You lift yours. To roots that tangle gently. You all drink. And for a moment, no one says a word. The fire crackles. The water laps softly against the edges of your floating home. When it's time to sleep, Io doesn't leave. She curls beside you under the woven blanket, her breath warm against your collarbone. The sky overhead is thick with stars. No moon tonight, just the soft shimmer of constellations too old to name. You whisper, "Do you think we'll always remember this?" She nods against your chest. "We planted memory," she murmurs. "It'll bloom again." And it does. The next morning, and the morning after. In each vine you tend to. In each sketch she leaves behind. In the curve of grandfather's smile. In the way the water hugs your canoe. No matter which canal you choose. Even when the day comes, because it will, when Aya has to return to her family for a season, and grandfather no longer walks with the same ease. Even then, the Chinampa will remember. The floating garden you built together, seed by seed, hand by hand, heart by heart, not for glory, not for gain, just because the fire is low now, its last embers glowing softly, like sleepy fireflies nestled in the ash. You sit with your legs tucked beneath you, the blanket pulled up to your chin, the sounds of the Chinampa slowing to a hush. The frogs have quieted. Even the breeze has softened, just enough to rustle the reeds in a slow, rhythmic lull. You breathe in, deep and warm, and you feel it, the fullness of the journey. The weight of each day, not heavy, but satisfying, like the cool press of soil after a planting. like the hush that follows a good rain, that you've traveled far without leaving, that you've tended vines, shared laughter, planted memories in floating soil, and now you can rest. You hear the echo of Iowa's sketching, the rustle of grandfather's footsteps, the murmur of the water greeting your canoe. There with you still, folded into the corners of your mind, quiet companions for your dreams. The stars above blink slowly, and beneath them, the Chinampa floats, steady, strong, full of life. It will keep floating, and so will you. Let your eyelids fall gently, like leaves in still water. Let your thoughts settle, soft and silent. Let sleep come, like the moonrise over a glass-smooth lake. And remember, what you've planted here will bloom again. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.